Terrika Foster-Brasby. My girl, welcome. It's so good to see you. I haven't seen you since the WNBA finals, which wasn't that long ago, but it feels now like such a long time since that ended because so much news has happened. And one of those big, first of all, there were all these like coaching vacancies in the WNBA, which we'll get to, but none other than one that was a very big one, which is the Indiana Fever, and we know that's a team that everyone's focused on and paying attention to because Caitlin Clark is on that team. So they parted ways with their head coach Christy Sides, and there have been some rumors percolating, Terrika, that a coach you know pretty well was their target, which confused some of us because that coach was still under contract, but lo and behold, when the announcement came out, it was indeed Stephanie White, the now former head coach of the Connecticut Sun. She accepted an offer to be the Indiana Fever's new head coach. And so she will be heading back to Indiana because that's where she has roots. She played there as a player. She coached in Indiana before as an assistant and a head coach. And now she's returning again to be the head coach of this new iteration of the Indiana Fever. Terrika, tell me, what do you make of all of this? We sort of knew when the final official announcement came, so it wasn't a shock, but when you first started hearing that Steph may be leaving to head to Indiana, what do you make of all of this?
Well, at first I was like, well, wait, are we sure that Steph wants to leave? There have been conversations that she considered signing an extension with Connecticut. Like there were a bunch of things that we had been hearing around her from a local perspective. But one thing that Steph White has always said was that family is always going to be important to her. No matter what decision is made, it is always going to make sure that it makes sense for her family. Even with coming to Connecticut in 2023, it was, does this make sense for my family? She had often said, I didn't even know if I was going to even get back into coaching after Vanderbilt. Number one, I didn't even know if I wanted to. But number two, it has to make sense for myself and my family. Well, immediately after the finals, or maybe even during the finals, there was some form of an emergency that was going on with her family. It caused her to push back her exit interview with the Connecticut Sun. And then even during the interview that she did have, you could visibly see that she was upset. Her partner, Lisa Salters, had also missed a few weeks on Monday Night Football, which is something that was also very uncommon. So you could see that there was something familial that was going on that took precedence. And so because of that, this decision wasn't just solely, I want to leave Connecticut, which, to be clear, there was no firing. I've seen some headlines that have said, Connecticut dismissed her and all this other stuff. That is not what happened.
Right.
It was a mutual agreement to separate. And Jen Rosati had said, we wish that we could have kept her, but I understood the scenario. So this is home for her, right? She grew up in Indiana. She was Miss Indiana basketball in 95. She won a national championship with Purdue in 1999, the only championship they have under Coach Carolyn Peck. She, again, as you mentioned, played basketball for the Fever for 5 years, was an assistant coach, took over the team in 15-16, won a championship with them as an assistant in 2012. So this was a homecoming situation. And you can see that the team is also very excited about having Stephanie White at the helm.
Yeah, we can see that they are very excited. When the news dropped, look, you can see her resume here. It's a very impressive resume. She's been a head coach. She's been an assistant. She played, you listed out some of her accolades already. We also know she's in the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. So Stephanie White is very well accomplished. This is known about her. It's one of the reasons why the Indiana Fever were pursuing her. Many of the members of the team posted about it immediately. Aaliyah Boston, some of the players, they're all putting up in their Instagram story. But Caitlin Clark had quite the reaction to it. She put it in her Instagram story. She also commented on a post. She was just super excited about, at least based on her Instagram comment, seems very excited to be having Steph White coming to the team. And so obviously there's a three-headed monster currently in Indiana, but we do know for purposes of the Fever, everything sort of starts with Caitlin Clark. So how important is it for Steph to, at least what it appears, have her buy-in, Terrika?
Well, yeah, it's incredibly important to have the buy-in of your young stars, and having Caitlin Clark support this move is very important, because one thing that you want to always have is you want to have the trust of your players. That's what made it work in Connecticut, is that she had the trust of that team. And I think when you have certain characteristics, like being a former player, like being a former champion, all of those things make sense. Well, add to that Stephanie White also, even as she had mentioned, had been watching Caitlin play since she was in 8th grade. She had been keeping up with her games. Stephanie White also dubs as a broadcaster when she's not coaching. And so Stephanie White had called several of her games at Iowa before. So there was already a familiarity between these two. And so there's already that trust that she has for what Stephanie White can bring, what Stephanie White can do. And I think that's important. It's not only important just as a young star in this league to want to be coached by someone who you have a profound respect for, but I also think it brings a little something different. Stephanie White will bring a little something different to this team, which is going through a complete overhaul already. I mean, they have a new general manager in Amber Cox. They have a new, well, I won't say new, but the original president and GM, Kelly Klopp, is back. Lynn Dunn is now taking an advisory role. So you can see that this organization is serious about where it believes the future of this organization can be. I think making those moves show your young stars that they are serious about where they want the future of this organization to be. You have a free agent in Kelsey Mitchell. This kinds of things, help to make a decision about wanting her to stay and having her to stay along. She had one of the best seasons of her careers last year. You have to think under Stephanie White, that can only get better. Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, back-to-back Rookie of the Years. You have to think if this is where we were under Christy Sides, who was just kind of learning on the job, so to speak, because she was a new head coach to this organization too. It was only her second year. You have to think that you are only going to improve and get better. So I think that just this move alone and overall the front office changes just really shows a person like Caitlin and like Aaliyah that this organization is serious about having a winning culture and is serious about wanting to continue to be not just a playoff team, but a contender team. And I think that is the kind of buy-in that you want and need of a Caitlin Clark when you make these kinds of decisions.
Well, you got to see and watch Steph White up close and personal. So, what do you think just in terms of her immediate impact on a team like the Fever? Because I think, I just want to say in my personal opinion, I thought Christy Sides did a hell of a job this year. Unfortunately, coaching change is happening, and that's not to say, obviously I think Steph White is a great coach too, but I expected the Fever to take a step next year anyway, just based on how they closed out the season and they made it to the playoffs. So what would you expect to be, I guess, I don't know if it's from a development perspective, but what do you think in terms of Steph White and her brand of basketball, or maybe her philosophy as a coach, to be the most immediate impact on Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey, that Fever team?
Well, I know one thing, right? Steph White loves to have a quick, fast-paced offense, right? And it was difficult to do that at times in Connecticut because Connecticut was an older team. They were an older, more veteran team, and they just weren't as fast as some others. Well, this is a much younger team. And so that offensive style should actually work very well here. But the other thing that we saw with the Connecticut team was their commitment to defense. And so she had an assistant coach at her side in Breon January, who also played for the Fever and who also understands the importance of defense. So I'd be very interested in seeing who she selects as part of her coaching staff that could also implement that defensive presence that had been very important to the success of her Connecticut team. That means means that this Fever team is going to have to buy in on being stronger defensively. No matter how well we want to give Caitlin her flowers, and we should, we also have to be honest that defense was not the strongest suit for this Fever team, and specifically Caitlin Clark. And so that's something that I feel Steph will make an immediate impact on, is that she will implement a structure that everyone's going to have to be committed to whatever that goal is. And if that goal is getting better defensively while also implementing a quicker, more faster paced offense, then I think she has the trust of the team and the ability to do that. So those are a couple of things, but I'd be very interested in seeing who she selects to be a part of her coaching staff there in Indiana, because that's also going to play a huge role in what the priorities are from an on the court standpoint. From an off the court standpoint, I think the culture will absolutely change. If you get to and let me be fair, I didn't cover Indiana well enough on a regular, everyday basis to know whether there was a negative culture there. So that's not at all what I mean. But what I'm saying is she brings a culture of winning. She brings a culture of confidence. She brings a culture of understanding your public face. She's a broadcaster. She's a media personality as well as a coach. So if there's anyone who can help you to understand what it means to have a media presence, and granted, Aaliyah Boston, amazing. Caitlin, good media presence. Lexi Hall, good media. Kelsey Mitchell, someone you could absolutely speak to and have a great combo with about anything. So I just think she helps to shape that and make that better. She's also most certainly not going to stand for any of the negativity that had been associated with Fever fans. And we know it's not all the fans, but there were certain ones who use the Fever name to kind of spew things that just do not stand for what the WNBA stands for. Stephanie White is very outspoken on those kinds of things, and that is not something she's ever going to put up with, something she's never going to tolerate. So I think when I say a culture shift, that is what I mean, that she just will be the kind of leader that really exemplifies the standard that she expects to see from her players. And you will see that as the season continues with her at the helm.
Okay, so with that said, she's this really strong leader, as you described. You know her well. What does this loss mean for the Connecticut Sun? They have some of their key players, their stars, who were free agents, and they just lost a coach who everyone seemed to like and believe in. We've heard Jen there speak and say, like, look, she wants someone who's committed to Connecticut. And I don't think that means, obviously when Steph White was there, I'm sure she was very committed to her job. But when she talked about it, it's more like, I guess I didn't even realize that Steph White wasn't living there like full time, like all year round. And so that's just like an example. Like, she wants a coach they want their next coach to be someone who is there year round, living there, embedded in the community, because their coach prior to Steph was Kurt Miller, and he was there for years. This is not an organization that goes through just changing coaches like every other year, every few years. So what happens next for the Sun?
Yeah, I mean, I want to touch on that, Nat, because you're right. Like, this organization started with Mike Tebow. In between Mike Tebow and Kurt Miller, you had Ann Donovan for a couple years, but this was an organization from a coaching perspective that literally was consistent. So this, new coach every couple years situation that they found themselves in is not the norm. This is just kind of what it has been. And again, they didn't want to lose Stephanie. If there was a way that Jen could have kept Stephanie, she would have done so. She said that she was happy with her leadership. She knew, the players liked her, the community liked her, the fans loved her here. So there was something that was being built here. I think what Jen is alluding to when she says someone being committed to Connecticut is that understanding, let's keep it a spade. I live in Connecticut, right? Connecticut ain't the most glamorous place to live. You don't really sell a lot of people on saying, hey, come to Connecticut. Go to New York. People will love that. Miami, people love that. Atlanta, LA. It doesn't take much to sell somebody to go to those places. People say Connecticut, you're thinking, well, what in the world is there in Connecticut? So yeah, it does take a level of commitment to not only be here, but understanding that you're going to be coming into coaching a practically new team, and who she selects is going to weigh on whether or not those free agents who are free agents decide to stay or go. Having that connection, being someone that has the right fit, the right direction for the team is going to be critically important if you want to lure Dawana and Alyssa and Bree Jones to stick around. So that's going to be important. Also, I think what she means committed is to also understanding that Connecticut is behind the 8 ball as it relates to, facilities, resources, all of those kinds of things, right? And so we're not stupid. We see it. We see what Phoenix is doing and what Vegas is doing and what Chicago is getting ready to do. We see that. Players see that. Coaches also see that. So it's going to take someone that is committed and dedicated to this organization to say, hey, we may not have this just yet, but I'm working for you and I'm working with those in power to ensure that we get to this point. But trust me, right? Trust that we're still going to put our best foot forward despite not. And I think that's going to also be very important. So yeah, you're going to have to come in here with the expectation that there is some work to do. You might not have the same team anymore. It may take time. You may need to build. You may need to use your prowess to allure some free agents here to get people to want to be here. And there is no timetable. I haven't seen Jen say one time, what her timeline or timetable is for wanting to have this person in place. What I do know is that the draft lottery is on the 17th of November. The expansion draft is on the 6th or the 7th of December. And so these things are going to be happening quickly, and you're going to need someone who is able to make decisions about what players are going to be protected from expansion, or, what are your moves going to be come January when it's time to start signing free agents. You get what I mean? So I understand that it's going to be a process, and Connecticut has such a great fan base here. They have such a want. There's so much promise to this team, but you're definitely going to have to be a coach. And the beauty in that is it doesn't have to be one of these coaches that are currently on the market. They could possibly be bringing somebody up from the assistant ranks. It could also be someone from the college coaching ranks. It could be anyone, right? There's enough of an opportunity available here in Connecticut, and there are quite a few folks who you can look to fill that void. But she's going to have to make this decision sooner than later, just based on the timelines of what's approaching.
Okay. Wow. Listen, I'm just very fascinated by all this because there's still a number of head coach openings. So I wonder which team will be the next. There's also a chance that another coach could be out. We're hearing some rumors about other teams. I won't speculate right now, but there's just a lot happening. And so Connecticut, I still think right now would be an attractive destination. So at least based on what's in place right now. So it's going to be interesting to watch. And I got to tell you, Terrika, I'm already excited for next season. I'm like, can we start up again?
Same. Okay, we got to let college basketball breathe before we get it.
Yes, the college basketball season starts today, and I'm excited about that. So if you're not tapped in right now, you should be tapped in. Games started from noon Eastern today. You got USC over in Paris. So, Terrika and I will both be following the women's college basketball season. And we got some Big Ten over here on at NBC Sports. So make sure you're tapped in. It's women's basketball all year round, guys, okay? It does not stop. Terrika, thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you so much, and you'll be back because we are going to have more things to talk about related to the WNBA.
Thank you so much for having me, Nat. And in the spirit of the Big Ten, go Spartans.
There you go.